I grew up in a family that everyone in our neighborhood thought was perfect. We lived in a neat little house with a well-cut lawn, and my parents always showed up to church on Sundays, smiling and shaking hands like they were the most supportive, loving people in the world. From the outside, we looked like some picture-perfect postcard family. But inside those walls, it was a completely different reality. It was suffocating, dark, and filled with resentment that I didn't really understand until I was old enough to connect the dots. I wasn't a troublemaker. I wasn't rebellious. If anything, I was the opposite. I loved books, loved learning, and I caught on to things fast. Teachers would call me a bright kid with a big future. You'd think that's something parents would be proud of, right? Mine weren't. My intelligence wasn't celebrated. It was treated like a flaw, some irritating habit I just couldn't turn off. Whenever I answered questions too quickly in school or when I came home with grades that stood out, my parents would exchange these weird glances like I was doing something wrong. My siblings hated it even more. They thought me being the smart one made them look bad, and instead of ever being happy for me, they'd mock me in front of their friends, muttering nicknames like dictionary or robot. If I explained things in detail or knew the answer before they did, they'd roll their eyes and laugh like I was the most annoying person alive. So while my classmates saw the kid with all the answers, at home I was too much to deal with, too much to accept, too much to love. And that's the cruel irony of my life. What should have made me special ended up making me the target. When I think back to my childhood, the first memories that come to mind aren't toys or birthday parties. They're books, piles of them. I used to sit cross-legged on the living room floor, flipping through pages with a kind of hunger that I couldn't even explain. I wanted to know how things worked, why the sky was blue, why numbers could go on forever, why people dreamed at night. At school, my teachers noticed quickly. By the age of 7, they were giving me extra worksheets because I finished everything before the other kids. Some even let me help classmates who were struggling. To me, it felt natural. To them, it was impressive. But to my family, it was irritating. My mom would sigh whenever a teacher praised me, like she was embarrassed. "Stop making it sound like you're all that," she'd mutter as soon as we got home. My dad's favorite phrase was, "Don't get a big head." At first, I didn't understand. Wasn't I supposed to try my best? But slowly, I realized that in my house, being proud of yourself was considered showing off. The older I got, the harsher it became. My siblings joined in, rolling their eyes every time I answered a question too quickly at dinner or pointed out when someone got a fact wrong. "Nobody cares, Brainiac," my older brother sneered once. "You think you're better than us?" The truth was, I never thought I was better. I just wanted to be included, to be myself. But their reactions drilled guilt into me. I started hesitating before raising my hand in class. I muted myself during family conversations, letting wrong answers slide because I was afraid of looking annoying. Still, any glimmer of achievement I couldn't hide would set them off. When I proudly brought home a spelling bee medal, my sister laughed and said, "Congratulations, you can spell. That'll get you far," dripping sarcasm. My dad tossed it into a drawer and told me not to wave it in everyone's face. That pattern defined my childhood. Every time someone outside my home built me up, my family tore me down. And because I was a kid, I believed them. His seed of rejection took root deep in me, twisting the way I saw myself. I didn't feel smart anymore. I felt like a burden, too bright for a family that wanted nothing but dull light. I still remember that day so vividly it feels like it's burned into my memory. I was 12, and our school had hosted a regional science fair. I'd worked on my project for weeks, obsessively perfecting it, an experiment about water filtration that I thought was fascinating. When I won first place, they handed me this shiny gold trophy with a little plaque that had my name engraved on it. I remember clutching it to my chest, feeling like my heart would burst. For once, I thought I had something at home no one could mock. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment my parents said they were proud of me. I came rushing through the front door, still in my school uniform, excitement spilling out of me. "Look, I won," I said, holding the trophy high like it was proof that I had worth. My mom barely looked up from the television. My dad frowned before I could even finish explaining what the award meant. "Why are you parading that thing around?" he snapped. My chest tightened, but I laughed nervously, thinking maybe he was joking. He wasn't. My brother snatched the trophy out of my hands and spun it in the air. "Oh, look at genius over here, saving the world with tap water," he said mockingly. My sister giggled, adding, "Do you ever get tired of showing off?" I felt my cheeks burn, not from pride anymore, but from shame. I reached for the trophy, but my brother pulled it back and hissed, "You think you're better than all of us, don't you?" That's when my dad's voice thundered across the room. "Enough. You're making everyone else feel stupid with your little competitions. Do you have any idea what that does to the family?" My mom chimed in, sharper than him. "You're destroying harmony in this house. You don't need to shove your so-called intelligence in everyone's face." I froze in place, the words hitting harder than on any slap could. All I had had done was succeed at something I cared about. But instead of celebrating, my family made it clear. My intelligence wasn't a gift, it was a weapon that, in their eyes, I wielded against them. My brother threatened to smash the trophy if I brought it to school again, and when I tried to argue, my dad pointed to my room and shouted, "Go, and don't bring that thing into this living room again." Lying in bed that night with the trophy hidden under my blanket, I realized something terrifying. They didn't just dislike my smartness, they saw it as dangerous, disruptive, almost like I was attacking them by being myself. That was the first time I understood. In my house, the brighter I shined, the more they wanted to snuff me out. It started small, or at least it felt small at first. Those little things you brush off as accidents. My homework disappearing from the dining table, assignments suddenly going missing from my bag. Once, I stayed up late finishing a history paper I was really proud of. I left it neatly stacked and ready for the morning, only to discover it gone the next day. My teacher told me I'd get a 0 if I didn't hand it in. I searched everywhere, panicked, until later that week I found it crumpled inside the trash can in the garage. No one admitted to putting it there, but my brother smirked when I confronted him, muttering, "Guess it wasn't that good anyway." At first, I told myself it was coincidence, but the coincidences stacked up fast. Forms I needed signed for school trips or competitions were suddenly misplaced. I'd give them to my mom, trusting her, but she'd forget to put her signature. Sometimes she'd insist I never gave them to her at all. One time, when I broke down crying because I missed the registration deadline for a spelling competition, she patted my shoulder and said, "It's for the best. You don't always need to be the star." The words stung so deep. Ply. I almost believed her. Almost. My dad was worse in his own way. He didn't hide papers or forget things. He used logic to cut me down. When I researched scholarship programs for advanced schools, he told me flatly, "People like us don't belong there. Don't set yourself up for disappointment." When I argued back with facts, he accused me of being disrespectful. "You think you know better than your own father?" he barked. "Lower your expectations or you're going to ruin yourself." They didn't just ignore my potential, they actively chipped away at it. I remember staying late in the library after school pretending I had club meetings because at home there was no atmosphere to study. If I so much as opened a book at the kitchen table, my siblings would make obnoxious noises until I gave up. My brother took my notes once and scribbled all over them in permanent marker. My sister would slip wrong answers into my flashcards as a joke, and when I called them out, they accused me of being dramatic. "You're imagining things," my sister sneered. "Not everything is about you." That line broke me more than once. Gaslighting became the family's favorite tactic. If I ever dared to connect the dots and say, "You're trying to hold me back," they'd laugh and twist it around. My mom would act wounded, claiming I was accusing her of being a bad mother. My dad would say I was paranoid. And deep down, because I was already so isolated, I started believing them. Was I really imagining it? Was I ungrateful? But the evidence kept slapping me in the face. Midnight before an important presentation, my laptop charger vanished, leaving my computer at 5%. My closet was accidentally locked from the outside when I needed my uniform, and the cruelest moment came when I applied for a summer program. Weeks later, I found the rejection email, but later discovered I'd missed an earlier acceptance email. Someone had deleted it off my account. Trash emptied. That time, the rage was unbearable. I confronted my siblings, voice shaking, but they simply laughed. "As if Harvard wants you, get over yourself." That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling every ounce of trust I'd ever had drain away. My family wasn't neutral about me. They wanted me to fail. They were threatened by me, jealous, maybe even hateful. But whatever it wasn't love. Families are supposed to build you up, protect you, shelter you from cruelty. Mine was the cruelty. Mine shoved me into despair and then told me I was imagining the shove. The walls of my house became a prison, every smile from them a hidden dagger. And slowly, painfully, I began to understand. It didn't matter how smart I was. In their eyes, my intelligence wasn't a gift at all. It was the enemy that needed to be destroyed. When the acceptance letter came, I almost couldn't believe it was real. It was from a prestigious program I'd worked toward for what felt like forever. The kind of opportunity that could change the entire course of my life. I opened the email alone in my room, my hands trembling, and when I saw the word congratulations, I burst into tears. For once, I thought the universe was finally proving I wasn't crazy, that all my hard work, every late night, every tear I cried over sabotaged homework was worth something. I imagined walking into the living room, sharing the news, and finally hearing the words I'd wanted my whole life. "We're proud of you." That fantasy shattered within seconds. As soon as I told them, the air in the room shifted. My mom's expression hardened, and my dad leaned back with an icy glare. My brother muttered under his breath, "Of course she got in. Miss Perfect always does." My sister scoffed, and instead of pride, what came next was venom. "So you think you're just going to run off and leave us behind?" my mom snapped, crossing her arms. "This isn't about us anymore, is it?" my dad added boldly. "It's about you trying to act superior." I stammered, confused. "No, this is for all of us. Don't you see? This could open doors. It could—" "Stop," my father cut me off sharply. If you go to that school, you'll destroy this family. You'll embarrass us, make your siblings feel small. Is that what you want? My chest ached so badly it hurt to breathe. I wanted to scream that it wasn't about them, that this was about my future. But every word they hurled at me chipped away at my excitement. They turned something beautiful into a crime. Finally, my dad laid it out flat. Either you stay here, attend a normal school like everyone else, and keep your head down, or you leave this house. Those are your options. My whole body shook. I could barely form words, but what came out of my mouth was raw and trembling. You'd kick me out for wanting a better life? For being me? You're tearing this family apart, my mom snapped, her voice like a blade. Tears blurred my vision, and my voice cracked between defiance and heartbreak. No, you broke this family the moment you decided my success was a threat instead of something to celebrate. For a second, the room fell silent. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then my brother spat out, "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." That was the moment I knew the line had been drawn. Home was no longer home. It was a battlefield, and I was no longer welcome unless I surrendered who I was. I thought, deep down, that someone would stand up for me. Even as my dad's ultimatum echoed in the air like a death sentence, I clung to this tiny shred of hope. My younger sister, let's call her Mia, had always been the closest thing I had to an ally. We shared a room for years, whispered secrets late at night, giggled under covers when the lights were off. She knew me better than anyone else in that house. If anyone could speak up for me, it would be her. So I turned to her. My voice was trembling, but there was still hope in it. "Mia, you know me. You know I'm not trying to hurt anyone. Tell them, please." I searched her face like it was the lifeline I had been drowning for. For a brief second, I saw her soften, her lips part like she might actually defend me. But then she closed up, her jaw tightening, and the words that came out struck me harder than anything my parents had said. "You do act like you're better than everyone else," she muttered, barely making eye contact. "Always correcting, always showing off. Maybe they're right. Maybe you don't belong here." I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't just disappointment, it was betrayal. Sharp, cold, merciless. I couldn't even catch my breath. "You too?" My voice cracked like glass breaking, and still she refused to look at me. My mom smirked at her words like she had won some twisted game. The tears spilled before I could stop them. My hands shook so hard I had to press them against my thighs, but even that didn't steady me. "I thought you of all people." My throat closed, the rest of the sentence choking me. It didn't matter. Silence filled in the blanks. "I thought you loved me. I thought you saw me. I thought I wasn't completely alone, but I was. Completely." My dad folded his arms like a judge passing down a sentence. "It's settled then. You either choose this family or you leave it." Those words twisted around inside me. To them, choosing family meant choosing mediocrity, silence, and shame, and choosing myself meant exile. I stumbled to my room, slamming the door behind me. I dropped onto my bed, sobbing into my pillow until everything was soaked. My chest hurt so bad it felt like something inside me had split open. I wanted to scream, but I didn't want to give them more satisfaction. My hands moved on instinct, grabbing my backpack, stuffing it with clothes, notebooks, anything I thought I might need. Each zipper I pulled felt like another thread snapping between me and the family I thought I had. The house was quiet, except for my broken breathing and the shuffling of fabric as I shoved my life into a bag. Every laugh we'd shared, every family memory suddenly felt like lies. I thought about the time Mia held my hand when I was scared of the dark, how she promised she'd always be there for me. And now she had chosen them, chosen not to see me, not to stand by me. That wound cut far deeper than anything my parents had said. When I walked back out, bag slung over my shoulder, my mom glanced at it with thinly veiled satisfaction. My dad's only words were, "Don't expect us to beg you to stay." My brother gave a mock salute. And Mia, she wouldn't even look up. That silence from her pierced me worse than their cruel words. At least their hatred was loud. Her silence almost felt like agreement. As I stood there, my cheeks still wet and burning, I realized some words leave scars because they're shouted, but some rip you apart because they're whispered by the very person you trusted to protect you. That night, my heart didn't just break. It shattered into pieces I wasn't sure I'd ever put back together. The night I left my house, I didn't even know where I was going. The streets felt colder than they'd ever been, even though it was the middle of summer. My backpack dug into my shoulder, stuffed with a few shirts, notebooks, and a toothbrush. Everything else I owned, all the little things that made up my life, was left behind in the room I'd called mine, a room that no longer belonged to me. I walked until my legs ached, too stubborn to cry in public, pretending I was just another kid out late instead of the one who no longer had a home. Eventually, I ended up at my friend Hannah's doorstep. When she saw me, puffy-eyed and dragging that half-torn backpack, she didn't ask many questions. She just opened the door and said, "You can stay." I could have collapsed right there. But even as I lay on her lumpy couch under a borrowed blanket, gratitude was tangled with shame. I kept thin. King. I've been kicked out for being too smart. Is that even real? Who does that happen to? It felt like I was living some twisted nightmare no one would believe. The couch became my bed for weeks. I told myself it was temporary, but the days dragged. I'd wake up to the sound of her family making breakfast, the smell of food hitting me like a cruel reminder. Most mornings, I'd leave before they sat down to eat because the awkwardness of being the extra mouth at the table was unbearable. At school, I tried to act normal, but my stomach growled so loudly in class, I had to ask a classmate for granola bars. The humiliation of whispering, "Could you spare one?" stuck to me worse than hunger did. I picked up part-time shifts wherever I could, stocking shelves, wiping tables, bagging groceries. I was exhausted all the time, juggling work and school, but quitting wasn't an option. If I didn't pull my own weight, I'd drown. Still, in the quiet moments, the anger crashed over me. How could my own family toss me aside like trash? I replayed the ultimatum over and over in my head until it poisoned every thought. And yet, in a strange way, the very thing they had hated, my mind, was the only thing keeping me alive. I clung to my intelligence like it was a life raft. No matter how destroyed I felt, one part of me whispered, "You are more than this. You will get out." It was the only sliver of hope I had left. The label that once felt like a curse, too smart, became my only weapon. If I couldn't belong in a family, maybe I could carve a place for myself in the world. But lying awake on that couch at night, staring at the shadowy ceiling, the thought still stabbed at me. If my own family didn't want me, who possibly could? It was during one of my lowest points that someone finally noticed. I had dragged myself into school after another sleepless night on Hannah's couch, running on a single granola bar I'd found stuffed at the bottom of my bag. My brain felt foggy, but I still forced myself to sit in the front row of Mrs. Patel's English class because if nothing else, I could still answer questions. Halfway through the lesson, she paused mid-sentence and just looked at me. I tried to avoid her gaze, but there was no hiding the tired circles under my eyes or how hollow my face had become. After class, she pulled me aside. "You're not yourself lately," she said gently. I wanted to deny it, to keep the act going, but the concern in her voice cracked something open in me. Before I could stop myself, the whole ugly truth tumbled out. Being kicked out, sleeping on couches, working odd jobs just to make it through. I kept waiting for her to judge me, to say I was being dramatic, but she didn't. Instead, she listened like every word mattered. That conversation turned into something life-altering. She gave me pamphlets for scholarships I never knew existed and connected me with the school counselor, who in turn found emergency housing options. She even drove me to meet with a program director who helped kids in situations like mine. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt seen, as if someone actually believed I was worth saving. The kindness nearly broke me. After years of cruelty at home, I wasn't used to compassion. I remember shaking my head and whispering, "Why would you do this for me?" Ms. Patel's answer was simple, "Because you deserve it." Those words shattered every poisonous lie my family drilled into me. That was my turning point. I realized my intelligence wasn't the curse they told me it was. It was my tool, my key to something better. With guidance, I could turn the very thing they resented into my lifeline. Being too much had never been the problem. The problem was that I was surrounded by people who wanted me to be less. The months that followed felt like rebuilding after a fire. Everything old was gone. My home, my family's approval, the illusion that they would someday love me for who I was. All I had left were ashes and the raw will to survive. But I decided those ashes would be the soil where I'd grow something new. Scholarships didn't fall into my lap easily. I applied to dozens. Pages of essays written late at night with my eyes stinging from exhaustion after a shift wiping down tables or bagging groceries. I worked until my hands ached, sometimes writing scholarship applications on napkins during lunch breaks because every second mattered. And still, in between all of that, schoolwork piled up. I'd sit under flickering fluorescent lights in the library, pushing myself long after everyone else had gone home. There were nights where I cried into my sleeve, telling myself I couldn't do it, but then remembering every cruel word my family had thrown at me. Their betrayal burned like fuel, sparking the fire to keep going. Of course, I broke down privately more times than I can count. There were evenings when I stared at the ceiling of that tiny student housing room, wondering if I'd made a mistake. I would curl up on the thin mattress, feeling the weight of being utterly unwanted, my chest heavy with grief. But even then, in my weakest moments, my mind whispered back, "You've already survived the worst. You can survive this too." And slowly, cracks of light began appearing. A scholarship covered tuition I thought I'd never afford. A part-time tutoring job proved that my intelligence wasn't a weapon against me. It was something people valued and relied on. My peers started coming to me for help, not mocking me, and it felt foreign but healing. Hannah's family treated me like I actually belonged, even saving me a plate at dinner. Ms. Patel would check in, reminding me that it was okay to lean on others even when I was stubbornly independent. That was when I began to understand the idea of a chosen family. I didn't need the people who shared my blood if they refused to share love. I could build a community out of kindness, respect, and mutual belief in one another. Friends who celebrated my wins, mentors who nudged me forward, strangers who invested in my future through scholarships. They became the scaffolding holding me up when I thought I'd crumble. The victories weren't grand at first, but they were mine. Passing a difficult exam after 3 straight nights of studying. Being able to buy my own textbooks instead of borrowing ragged copies. Hearing the words, "You're really talented," from someone who didn't have to say it. Piece by piece, my shattered sense of self started coming back. What healed me most was realizing I didn't need to apologize for my mind, my drive, or my ambition. I had spent years shrinking myself to fit into a family that only wanted me small. Now, every late night study session, every paycheck, every scholarship acceptance served as proof that I wasn't too much. I was exactly enough. It wasn't easy, nothing about it was, but I finally started to own my story. I wasn't just the kid they kicked out for being too smart. I was the kid who rose from the rubble and built something better from it. Years later, when my dream finally took shape, it almost didn't feel real. I had been accepted into a highly competitive fellowship that came with national recognition. My name was on websites, my photo in newsletters, and my inbox flooding with congratulations from people who actually believed in me. For once, I didn't feel like an imposter. I felt like everything I had been through, every sleepless night, and every humiliation had led me here. That's when the emails from my family started. First from my mom, "We're so proud of you, sweetie. We always knew you'd make it." Then from my dad, "You turned out so strong because of the discipline we gave you." Even my brother chimed in, joking, "Guess those flashcards paid off?" Then, the irony of it all almost made me laugh, though the sound caught bitterly in my throat. They had done everything possible to break me, and now they wanted to bask in the glow of my hard-earned success. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd changed. But when I walked into that old living room, it felt like stepping into the past. They smiled wide, arms wide, practically rehearsed in their performance of pride. For a moment, I stood frozen, the younger version of me screaming inside my chest. But then the older me, the one who had survived and risen, took over. "You don't get to take credit," I said, my voice steady but sharp. The smiles slipped. "You didn't build me up. You broke me down. You mocked me, sabotaged me, kicked me out. Everything I am today happened not because of you, but in spite of you." Silence filled the air, but for once it wasn't suffocating. It was mine. My hands didn't shake this time. My voice didn't crack. I looked them in the eyes and added softly, "And I healed without you. That's the truth." I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge. The honesty was enough. Their power over me was gone. Looking back now, I don't feel the same hollow rage I once carried like a second skin. For a long time, every breath I took was fueled by bitterness, by the need to prove to them that throwing me away had been a mistake. But age, distance, and healing have a way of softening jagged edges. I don't see myself as a victim anymore. I see myself as someone who walked through fire and came out holding her own flame. The label that once weighed me down, being too smart, no longer feels like an insult or a curse. It feels like a crown I crafted from every sleepless night, every cruel word, every tear shed in silence. They tried to convince me that intelligence made me unworthy of love, but I've learned the opposite is true. My mind is a gift, one that carried me when nothing else did. It wasn't about being better than anyone else. It was about being true to myself, even when it cost me everything. My success stopped being about them a long time ago. It wasn't about proving them wrong or shoving accomplishments in their faces. That would mean they still had power over me, and they don't. Every step I've taken, from scholarships to jobs to recognition, has been for me, for the broken 12-year-old clutching a trophy in the living room, for the teenager curled up crying on a friend's couch, for the person I almost lost to despair. I carry those versions of myself with me like scars that have healed into strength. And I did more than just survive. I thrived. I found people who celebrated me without resentment, people who showed me that family doesn't have to mean blood. It can mean anyone who sees your worth and reminds you of it when you forget. I learned resilience. I learned independence. But most importantly, I learned that I don't need to shrink to be loved. If someone can't handle all of me, my mind, my ambition, my drive, then they were never meant to walk this path beside me. Yes, the betrayal hurt. It cut deep enough to shape the person I am today. But maybe that was the strange, painful gift of it. It forced me to build myself from the ground up, to define my own worth instead of waiting for theirs. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone who isn't ashamed of being too smart. I see someone who wears it with pride, someone who turned rejection into power, someone who chose herself when no one else did. And that choice, that defiance, that survival, is the reason I'm not just telling a story of loss. I'm telling a story of redemption.